Everyone thought they were looking at a helpless bride when 12 armed men burst into the cathedral, but what these criminals didn't know was that innocent Emma was a former Special Forces operative who had been waiting her entire civilian life for someone stupid enough to threaten her wedding day. She was about to save 180 lives in the next 4 minutes. Meet Emma Claire Richardson, 29 years old, with auburn hair cascading in perfect curls and emerald green eyes that held secrets deeper than anyone could imagine. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. She was marrying David Mitchell, a fellow veteran who understood her better than anyone ever had, but Emma's past was far more complex than even David fully knew. 6 years ago, Emma served in one of the military's most elite special operations units. Her call sign was Phoenix because she could rise from impossible situations and emerge stronger. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Syria, behind enemy lines operations, high-risk extraction missions, and survival in the harshest conditions imaginable. Emma was at the peak of her military career when something unexpected happened. During a covert operation in a civilian village, she defied direct orders to protect innocent lives. Her commanding officers called it protocol violation. Emma called it doing what's right. That day she saved 15 children from crossfire, but sacrificed her own career in the process. "You can't serve here anymore, Richardson," Colonel Harrison had told her that day. "We're processing your discharge papers." Emma left military life behind, but military training never left her. Her reflexes, strategic thinking ability, and calm under pressure were all still there, just hidden beneath layers of civilian life, and now beneath white silk and wedding lace. Now, at Sacred Heart Cathedral in downtown Chicago, she was preparing to marry the love of her life in front of 180 guests. The cathedral was breathtakingly beautiful, with stone arches reaching toward heaven and stained glass windows painting rainbow patterns across marble floors. The scent of white roses and baby's breath filled the air. Emma's mother, Patricia Richardson, sat in the front row crying tears of joy. Her father, retired Chicago police detective Robert Richardson, watched his daughter with pride-filled eyes. David stood at the altar waiting for her in his navy blue tuxedo, nervous smile, and love shining in his eyes. As Emma walked down the aisle, everything felt perfect. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon. Her cathedral train flowed behind her like liquid moonlight, and every step brought her closer to forever. Father Michael O'Connor had already begun the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Emma Claire Richardson and David James Mitchell in holy matrimony." That's when the massive oak doors at the back of the cathedral burst open with explosive force. 12 men entered wearing black tactical masks and military-style clothing, carrying assault weapons. The leader was tall and broad-shouldered, carrying what Emma immediately identified as an Arkansas 15. His voice was artificially distorted by a voice modulator. "Nobody move," he shouted, his voice echoing off the cathedral's stone walls. "This is business. Stay quiet. Stay still. Nobody gets hurt." The cathedral erupted into panic instantly. Guests screamed, diving behind wooden pews, some trying to crawl towards side exits. Emma's mother fainted. Her father instinctively reached for a weapon that wasn't there, his police training kicking in. "Back off, old man," the leader pointed his weapon at Emma's father. "Everyone here is going to empty their pockets, remove their jewelry, and hand over their valuables. This is a robbery, not a massacre, unless you make it one." Emma stood frozen at the altar, but appearances were deceiving. Her stillness wasn't fear, it was assessment. Her mind had automatically shifted into tactical mode, years of special forces training engaging like muscle memory. 12 hostiles. Leader with Arkansas 15, 30-round magazine, finger on trigger but not in firing position. 2 men by the entrance covering exits with MP5 submachine guns. 3 men moving down the left side aisle armed with Glock 19s. 2 men positioning at the right transept, both carrying shotguns. 4 more spread throughout the cathedral, creating overlapping fields of fire. While 180 people panicked around her, Emma's eyes were calculating firing lines, cover positions, civilian evacuation routes, and weapon acquisition opportunities. 5 years of elite military training was awakening beneath her wedding dress. This was more complex than her usual missions. 12 hostiles meant coordination, planning, and systematic elimination. "Emma, just stay calm," David whispered, trying to shield her with his body. "Everything will be okay." Emma looked at him. David's face showed fear and protective instinct, but David didn't know Emma wasn't the one who needed protection. Emma was the protector. The leader began walking toward the altar, his weapon casually pointed at the crowd. "Beautiful wedding," he said mockingly. "Shame it has to end early, but we've got a schedule to keep. Everyone starts emptying pockets now or we start making examples." Emma's tactical analysis continued, leader approaching, currently 12 feet away. If she moved fast enough, she could close the distance before he could bring the weapon to bear, but the other 11 were positioned to create deadly crossfire from multiple angles. This required more than brute force. It needed the kind of strategic thinking that had kept her alive through impossible odds overseas. An elderly man in the third row, probably in his 70s, was having trouble standing up. The panic had disoriented him, and he was fumbling with his wallet. "Move faster, Grandpa," the left side gunman shouted, pointing his Glock at the old man. That's when Emma's training made the decision for her. Innocent lives were in immediate danger. Protocol was clear. "Please don't hurt him," Emma called out, her voice carrying perfectly in the cathedral's acoustics. "He's just scared." The leader turned his attention to her. Well, the beautiful bride wants to negotiate," he laughed, a cold sound that echoed off stone walls. "Tell you what, princess. You hand over that rock on your finger, looks expensive, and maybe Grandpa gets to see tomorrow." Emma slowly reached for her engagement ring, but her movements were carefully calculated. She was measuring distances, checking sight lines, and most importantly noting that the second gunman by the entrance had relaxed his stance slightly, more focused on watching the crowd than maintaining tactical awareness. "You know what," the leader continued, stepping closer, "that dress probably cost more than most people make in a year. How about we add it to our collection?" Several women in the congregation gasped in horror. Emma's father started to stand up. "Dad, stay down," Emma said firmly, her voice carrying an authority that made everyone, including the gunman, pause for a moment. But Emma was already moving. In one fluid motion, she grabbed the heavy brass candelabra from the altar and swung it in a perfect arc, catching the leader's weapon and knocking it upward just as her knee drove into his solar plexus. The Arkansas 15 went flying as he doubled over, and Emma's elbow strike to the base of his skull dropped him unconscious before he hit the marble floor. "Emma, what are you doing?" David shouted, but Emma had already acquired the Arkansas 15 and was moving with lethal precision. The nearest gunman to her left was turning toward the altar, his Glock coming up, but Emma's military training operated faster than civilian reflexes. Single shot, center mass, target neutralized. The chaos that followed was systematic and brutal. Emma moved like a phantom through the cathedral, using the architecture itself as cover. Stone pillars became shields, wooden pews became concealment, and the altar area became her command position. Years of urban warfare training had prepared her for exactly this scenario. She rolled behind the marble altar as automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple positions. Splinters of stone and wood filled the air, but Emma's mind was calculating angles and ammunition counts. 12 hostiles, but now 11. Each one had a specific position, a specific field of fire, and a specific weakness. The two men by the entrance realized what was happening and began coordinating their fire, but Emma was already 3 moves ahead. She used the cathedral's acoustics to her advantage, creating noise in one direction while moving in another. Her white dress, which should have made her an easy target, somehow seemed to help her blend with the marble and white flowers scattered throughout the space. "Drop your weapons," Emma's voice carried across the cathedral with absolute authority, but she wasn't waiting for compliance. She was systematically eliminating threats while keeping civilian casualties at 0. The men positioned in the pews tried to use the guests as human shields, but Emma's precision shooting skills allowed her to neutralize threats without endangering innocents. Each shot was calculated, professional, and devastatingly effective. One of the gunmen near the transept made the mistake of underestimating her because of the wedding dress. He stepped out of cover, confident that a bride couldn't possibly be the threat his team was facing. Emma's response was swift and final. The remaining hostiles began to realize they weren't facing a panicked civilian. They were facing a professional operator who knew exactly what she was doing. Their coordination broke down as fear replaced confidence. "Drop your weapons." Emma's voice had completely transformed. This wasn't the soft-spoken bride from moments before. This was Sergeant Emma Richardson, Special Forces, giving orders that carried the weight of absolute authority. The last 3 gunmen positioned near the back of the cathedral had witnessed the systematic elimination of their entire team. They found themselves facing a bride who moved like a force of nature, who seemed to anticipate their every move, who fought with the kind of precision that could only come from years of the most elite military training available. They dropped their weapons and raised their hands. "We surrender," one of them shouted. "Don't shoot." Emma kept her weapon trained on them while scanning for any additional threats. "Face down on the floor, hands behind your heads. All of you, now." Total elapsed time, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. 12 armed men neutralized, 180 civilians safe. The cathedral fell into shocked silence. 180 people stared at Emma in complete disbelief. She stood there in her perfect white dress, holding an assault rifle with professional competence, her hair still perfectly arranged, her makeup flawless. Emma engaged the weapon safety and set it down carefully. She took a deep breath and turned to address the congregation. "Is everyone all right?" she asked, her voice returning to its gentle, caring tone. Her father, Detective Robert Richardson, stood up slowly, his face showing professional recognition of what he'd just witnessed. "Emma, sweetheart, how did you?" "It's a long story, Dad," Emma smiled softly. "But maybe we should finish the wedding first." David was still standing at the altar, staring at his bride in complete shock. "Emma, who, what, I'm still me," she said, walking back toward him. "I just had to face my past a little sooner than expected." Father O'Connor, still trembling slightly, picked up his microphone. "Should we call the police?" "They're already en route," Emma replied calmly. The cathedral security system automatically triggered when the doors were breached. Indeed, sirens could already be heard in the distance, growing closer. Emma took David's hands in hers. "David, I know this is a shock. I have things to tell you, things I should have told you before." "You were military," David's voice was filled with realization. "Really military, special forces, 5 years. I wanted to tell you, but you wanted to protect me." David looked around the cathedral at the neutralized threats, at the 180 people who were alive because of his bride's actions, at the woman he thought he knew completely but was only now truly meeting. "Emma Claire Richardson," he said softly, "who are you really?" Emma felt more vulnerable in that moment than she had facing armed gunmen. "I'm someone who loves you more than life itself, but I'm also someone who took an oath to protect innocent people, and that oath doesn't expire when you leave the service." The sirens were getting very close now. Father O'Connor cleared his throat and approached his microphone again. "Given the unusual circumstances, perhaps we should complete the ceremony before the authorities arrive." A voice from the congregation called out, "Yes, finish the wedding." It was Emma's mother, Patricia, who had recovered from her faint and was now standing with tears of pride in her eyes. "That's my daughter," she called out. "That's my brave, beautiful daughter." The entire cathedral erupted in applause. Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She'd spent her entire military career operating in secret. Now she was exposed in front of 180 people. David stepped closer to her. "Emma Richardson, will you marry me? All of you, the bride, the soldier, the protector, the woman I love." Emma felt tears forming in her eyes for the first time that day. "David Mitchell, as long as you understand that this comes with some unique challenges." "Challenges?" David laughed. "You just saved our entire wedding. I think I can handle a few challenges." Father O'Connor raised his voice over the approaching sirens. "Then by the power vested in me, and under these most extraordinary circumstances, I pronounce you husband and wife. David, you may kiss your bride." As they kissed, the cathedral exploded in cheers and applause. The doors opened and Chicago PD tactical officers began streaming in, but they found a wedding celebration instead of a hostage situation. Detective Lieutenant Sarah Chen, leading the tactical response, surveyed the scene with professional amazement. 12 neutralized gunmen, 3 surrendered suspects secured, and 180 unharmed civilians. "Who neutralized the threats?" she asked, though the answer seemed impossible. "That would be the bride," Detective Richardson said, approaching with obvious pride and disbelief. "The bride?" Lieutenant Chen looked at Emma, who was now posing for wedding photos with David. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to ask you some questions." "Of course," Emma replied. "But could we have just a few minutes for family photos first?" Lieutenant Chen studied the scene. 4 neutralized gunmen, 180 unharmed civilians, and a bride who looked like she'd just stepped out of a fairy tale rather than a firefight. "What's your background, Mrs. Mitchell?" "I served 5 years in special operations." "What was your call sign?" Emma hesitated for just a moment. "Phoenix." Lieutenant Chen's expression changed dramatically. "You're the Phoenix, the one from Operation Desert Storm." Emma nodded reluctantly. "Ma'am, you're a legend. They teach your tactics at the academy." Emma blushed deeply. I'm just a newly married woman now. And an amazing wife, David added, putting his arm around her. The reception that evening was unlike any wedding party in Chicago history. Guests couldn't stop talking about what they'd witnessed, and several news crews had gathered outside the hotel, but Emma only wanted to dance with her husband. Any regrets? She asked as they swayed to their first dance. About marrying a woman who could probably take down half the Chicago Bears single-handed. David grinned. Not a chance. I'm not exactly the normal, quiet wife you thought you were getting. David stopped dancing and looked into her eyes. Emma Claire Mitchell, you saved 180 lives today. You protected everyone I care about. You're brave, skilled, compassionate, and deadly when necessary. Normal is overrated. That night, as Emma hung up her wedding dress, she looked at herself in the mirror. For 6 years, she'd hidden who she really was. Today, she hadn't chosen to reveal herself. Circumstances had forced her hand, but maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. She was still the woman who loved David with all her heart. She was still the daughter who wanted to make her parents proud. But she was also Phoenix, protector, warrior, guardian. And maybe, just maybe, she could be all of those things at once. The next morning, Emma and David read the newspapers together before leaving for their honeymoon. The headline read, "Bride single-handedly stops armed robbery, saves 180 wedding guests." The subheadline read, "Former Special Forces operative Emma Mitchell neutralizes 4 armed men during her own wedding ceremony." Emma folded the newspaper and looked at David. "Well, there's no hiding anymore." "Good," David said, kissing her forehead. "I married the real you. All of you." Later that morning, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon in Hawaii, Emma received an unexpected visitor. A man in a military uniform stood at their door. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Colonel James Harrison." Emma stiffened slightly. This was her former commanding officer, the man who had processed her discharge. "Colonel," she said formally. "I came to apologize," he said simply, "and to tell you that what you did 6 years ago, protecting those children, it was the right call. Command has since acknowledged that we were wrong to let you go." Emma felt a weight she'd carried for years begin to lift. "Thank you for saying that, sir." "There's something else," Colonel Harrison continued. "The Army would like to offer you a consulting position training the next generation of Special Forces operators. Part-time civilian contract, your own terms." Emma looked at David, who nodded encouragingly. "I'll consider it. That's all we can ask. And Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for your service, all of it, including yesterday." As they drove away toward the airport, Emma reflected on how much her life had changed in just 24 hours. She'd started the day as Emma Richardson, former soldier trying to live a quiet civilian life. She was ending it as Emma Mitchell, wife, protector, and someone who no longer had to hide who she really was. "Penny for your thoughts," David asked as they sat in the airport terminal. "Just thinking about how sometimes life forces us to be who we really are, whether we're ready or not." "And who are you really, Mrs. Mitchell?" Emma smiled, looking at her wedding ring next to the simple band David had placed there just yesterday. "I'm someone who believes in protecting the people I love. Someone who thinks actions matter more than words. Someone who's learned that strength and love aren't opposites, they're partners." "Perfect," David said. "That's exactly who I fell in love with." As their plane lifted off toward Hawaii, Emma looked down at Chicago growing smaller below them. Somewhere down there, 180 people were going about their lives because she'd been willing to be who she really was when it mattered most. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives happen when we stop hiding and start embracing everything we are. Emma's moment had come wearing a white silk dress, holding an Arkansas 15, surrounded by the people she loved most. And in that moment, she'd learned the most important lesson.